After 35, most people find themselves imprisoned, not in a physical cell, but within their own minds. Have you noticed? We grow up believing we need to be realistic, grounded, abandoning childhood dreams. But I'll tell you something that might sound absurd. The biggest enemy of your wealth, your happiness, and your purpose lies precisely in how you use your imagination today. After 35, most people wake up, check their phones, feel a pang of anxiety, and start projecting disasters. An overdue bill, a potentially problematic email, a meeting where they're sure to face criticism. This is imagination in action, only it's being used against you. Hill said imagination is the most powerful force in the world, and I see every day how it's wasted on scenes of fear. How many nights have you spent mentally rehearsing the worst-case scenario, only to find that nothing happened? It works like this. The mind constructs images, the body reacts as if they were real, and your life begins to follow the direction of those images. After 35, when you've accumulated proof of what hasn't worked, this negative script becomes automatic. Do you see? Pause for a moment and look around. The chair you're sitting in, your phone, the camera you're watching me with, all of these were images before they were objects. Every convenience you use today started in the mind of someone who dared to imagine. If this is true for things, why wouldn't it be true for your income, your health, your relationships? I've learned that you can literally visit the future with your imagination and bring it into the present. This is how highly successful people operate. They see where they want to go and start acting like the person who's already arrived. William James called this the actor's technique, rehearsing internally until the role becomes you. It's not magic, it's mental direction. When we were children, until about 4 or 5 years old, we lived in this state all day long. Have you ever observed a child engrossed in their own world? They're not distracted. They're training the most creative faculty they possess. School unintentionally teaches the opposite. Stop dreaming, pay attention. Decades later, past 35, many can only pay bills Monday through Friday and escape on the weekend. It's not a lack of intelligence, it's a failure to remember that in addition to seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting and touching, we have higher faculties: perception, will, memory, intuition, reason, and imagination. It's with these tools that you rewrite the script. I lived the other side of this. There were days in the Toronto Fire Department when I'd spend hours replaying the same mental tape. Overdue bills, little money, no prospects. I felt small. When I picked up a certain book and a new idea entered, the first change wasn't in my paycheck. It was in the images I repeated. I replaced the scene of insufficiency with a clear scene of prosperity. I saw the business thriving, clients arriving, checks being deposited. I held on to that image until it moved me to act, and the action came. Not because I was lucky, but because my mind, guided by a vision, began to look for doors that had always been there and that I hadn't seen. You might say, but I'm realistic. Being realistic most of the time is being a well-argued pessimist. Behavioral science has a name for this: negativity bias. Without training, the mind gives more weight to what threatens than to what liberates. After 35, with more responsibilities and bills, this bias seems like prudence, and it becomes a prison. Want a quick test? Observe your thoughts for 24 hours and mark how many mental scenes are of what you don't want. Traffic jams, clients canceling, bad test results. This inventory is scary, and it's meant to be. It's a mirror of your current script. Now the good news: imagination is neutral. You can direct it. There's a creative energy flowing within you all the time, and the images you hold determine the vibration of your body, which you feel as emotion. If the image is of fear, the body vibrates with fear. If the image is of purpose, the body vibrates with conviction. This changes how you speak, walk, choose, and the world responds to that tone. This is why fake it till you make it works when done with integrity. You're not lying, you're rehearsing the role you've decided to take on. Let's get practical, because this is where most people fall. How do I change the tape if real life is screaming? First, make the invisible specific. Instead of, "I want to earn more," describe the scene as if it were a movie frame. It's 7:02, you wake up without an alarm, feel tranquility in your chest. Look at your bank statement and there's a sizable sum there. A message from a client confirms a project you love to do. Your schedule has blocks of focus and breaks. Feel the texture of that morning. Second, repeat the scene at the same times, upon waking and before sleeping, for 30 days. Third, collide with reality. Take one minimal action per day that the person from that future would take. Write the proposal, request a meeting, study for 20 minutes, organize your finances. Imagination provides direction, action gives it body. Are you worried about being deluded? Great, replace delusion with rehearsal. Athletes do this all the time. A famous example. Jim Carrey said that when he didn't have acting roles, he wrote himself a check and visualized contracts arriving. Years later, he signed deals that exceeded that amount. The point isn't the check. It's the concentrated use of imagination to shift one's self-image. You don't need to be a Hollywood actor to apply this. You need 5 minutes of silence and the courage to admit what you really want. And, because after 35 your schedule is already full, here's a shortcut that works. During the next week, set alarms at 9 a.m., 1 p.m. and 6 p.m. with the word "seen." When it goes off, close your eyes for 60 seconds and reframe the dominant image of that moment. If it's fear of losing your job, replace it with a scene of competence. You deliver a project with clarity and receive recognition. If it's debt, replace it with organization. You see the spreadsheet, feel relief, and take objective action. 60 seconds, 3 times a day. It seems small, but this is how you reprogram a mental habit. Frequent micro-rehearsals, quick break. Look at 3 objects near you and mentally say, "This started as an image." Do it now. This mini interruption breaks the pattern of "it's not possible" and reminds you of the obvious thing we forget. The world bends to well-sustained images. Your life too. Finally, a challenge for those who want to go further. And yes, it's simple. For 7 days, ban images of what you don't want in the first 10 minutes after waking up. If they arise, consciously replace them with a single key scene from your desired future. The same scene every day. If you fail, start again the next day. At the end of a week, observe your mood, focus, and decisions. You'll realize that it's not reality that holds you back after 35. It's the movie you play inside, and that movie from today on is your responsibility to direct. When I think about how school shapes us, I feel a mixture of sadness and anger. Sadness because the creative child that existed within me was slowed down by well-intentioned rules. Anger because the system, without realizing it, turned imagination into shame. I clearly remember the day the ban saw mutilated my thumb at Danforth Tech, and shortly afterward, I was out of school, bouncing around stupid jobs, changing oil, filling gas stations, doing any work that paid at the end of the day. The wound on my thumb hurt physically, but what weighed more heavily was discovering that, in the eyes of others, I had become practical, without the right to dream. And that's what traditional education does to millions. It transforms curiosity into conformity. Look at this coldly. Children, up to the age of 5, live in constant imagination. It's their natural state. But as they progress through school years, they often lose the internal permission to invent, question, and risk. Research analyzing millions of tests shows a significant decline in creative thinking throughout schooling. A trend that is not just anecdotal, it's measured. This decline isn't the fault of one person. It's a combination of policies, assessment methods, and pressures to get it right that prioritize correct answers over original questions. Have you ever stopped to count how many times, after 35, you self-censor before even writing down an idea? That's childish. That doesn't make money. That doesn't fit on my resume. These phrases are the bricks of an invisible prison, and the effect is cumulative. The more years you spend scolding the creative child within you, the easier it becomes to accept mediocre routines as reality. There are studies showing that divergent abilities, the ability to generate many solutions to a single problem, tend to decline during childhood and adolescence unless actively cultivated. This means that the problem is not irreversible, it is neglected. What does this have to do with money? Everything. When imagination is repressed, you tend to focus only on safe paths, stable employment, predictable routines, choices based on fear. Behavioral science explains that the brain pays more attention to the negative, criticism, losses, risk, than to the positive. It's a well-known bias. Bad outweighs good. This explains why a small financial risk can turn into a disproportionate emotional catastrophe in your head, and why many people prefer the comfortable prison of a guaranteed salary to the uncertain leap of a pulsating idea. And more, the link between money and emotional well-being is real, but complex. Research shows that financial insecurity intensifies negative emotions and limits creative capacity. Having resources, up to a certain point, reduces daily stress and opens up mental space to imagine and plan. In short, when you suppress your imagination for fear of losing money, you often create the very problem you fear: less creativity, less innovation, fewer income options, greater emotional insecurity. It's a vicious cycle that needs to be intentionally broken. This isn't just theory. I've seen this in people over 35 who've resigned themselves to not trying. I've also seen it in giant companies that lost their future because they refused to imagine different possibilities. Pioneering companies with knowledge and resources were overtaken by those who dared to imagine a new path and act on it. Kodak, for example, had digital technology in its vaults and yet remained stuck in its old model. Its inability to imagine a new photographic world in a timely manner cost it dearly. The same pattern has repeated itself in countless corporate stories. When imagination is relegated to childish entertainment, the loss translates into real bankruptcy. So what to do? First, admit that adult realism is often an excuse for fear. I admitted this to myself after my thumb injury. I could have settled for, "That's just how it is," but I chose to reopen the workshop of my imagination. If you want to break free, you need explicit exercises that rebuild step by step the creative faculty that school and life have dulled. These aren't mystical techniques, they're practical exercises. Here are a few I've used with students and ordinary people, transforming skepticism into practice. Set aside 15 minutes daily for serious play. This isn't business planning, it's playing with ideas without judgment. Take an ordinary object and brainstorm 10 impossible uses for it. Do this for 21 days. The shame disappears with practice. Reduce realism through micro-experiments. Instead of, "I'm going to quit my job," try, "I'm going to sell a class, an ebook, or a service for 4 weeks." Small tests reduce fear and show real results, and imagination returns when you get quick feedback. Rewrite your inner dialogue. Replace "I can't" with "How can I?" Replace the question, "Is this safe?" with "What does this look like as a minimum viable product?" Language changes the brain's focus, and focus fuels images. Revive the childhood practice of storytelling. Imagine a perfect day 5 years from now and describe it with sensory details. Where you are, what sounds you hear, what you smell, who's around you. Do this when you wake up or before you go to sleep. Repetition builds conviction. Create a portfolio of attempts. Write down 3 ideas weekly and execute the smallest part of them. Record your learnings. The success rate matters little. What matters is that your imagination is engaging with reality. If you think this is impractical after 35, remember that significant external changes begin with internal practice. I'm not saying it will be comfortable. The first time I let my mind dream, I felt fear, laughter and shame, different emotions at different times. But the difference between someone who ages and someone who flourishes is precisely this willingness to use imagination as a decision-making tool, not as a distraction. Now, a small challenge that serves as a contract with yourself. For 7 days, whenever a creative idea arises, write it down before censoring it, even if it's absurd. At the end of the week, choose the most exotic idea and conduct a 3-day micro-experiment around it. Measure, adjust, learn. If nothing happens in 10 days, return to the drawing board and repeat. This seems simple, and it is. But the simple reprograms the practice. Finally, don't misunderstand me. I'm not asking you to become an irresponsible dreamer. I'm asking you to recover a mental freedom that adulthood tries to trade for security. When children imagine, they don't calculate profit. They explore possibilities. We, over 35, need that same license, but with action, discipline, and judgment. Note: creativity isn't a luxury. It's an engine of evolutionary survival in an ever-changing world. If school taught you to obey, teach yourself now to imagine, experiment, and rebuild options. Do this, and you'll see that the prison was made of ideas you accepted, not of real chains. After 35, the most paralyzing fear is the feeling that it's too late. Too late to change careers, too late to start a business, too late to learn a new skill, too late to achieve the life they truly desire. This thought is sneaky. It seems realistic, but it's actually one of the biggest illusions that exist. It's not age that limits, it's the self-image you carry. The mental portrait you've built over the years determines the limits of what you believe is possible. When someone says, "I can't," it's too late. I've missed the boat. What's actually happening is that this person sees nothing beyond the image they've accepted as true. How many times have you told yourself, "If I had started 10 years ago, I'd be better off today"? This is one of the most common traps, because it generates regret, but also fuels the excuse for not acting now. Research shows that the feeling of being too old is much more mental than biological. Stanford University has pointed out in studies on longevity and perception that the decisive factor for reinventing oneself is not chronological age, but the belief about what age means. Those who believe that aging is synonymous with decline, in fact, experience more physical and emotional limitations. But those who view age as a period of new opportunities, paradoxically, have more energy, more willingness, and even live longer. At 35, 45, 55, or even 65, you still have time to create a completely new cycle. Think of people who only found their purpose later in life. Harlan Sanders, the Colonel Sanders of KFC, was 65 when he began to expand the idea of fried chicken that became a global chain. Nelson Mandela was imprisoned for 27 years and became president of South Africa after 70. These examples are not miraculous exceptions. They are merely reminders that age is not the barrier, the belief is. I experienced this firsthand. When I dropped out of school early, when I was injured and thought I had no future, it seemed like I had missed all my chances. I had no education, no connections, no money. And when I decided to leave the fire department to open my cleaning business, people laughed at me. "You have no education. How are you going to compete with big companies?" they said. If I had believed in the image they had of me, I would have spent the rest of my life shuffling from job to job, waiting for my paycheck at the end of the month. But I chose to nurture another image, An image that showed me prospering, even if it didn't make sense to anyone at that moment. This fear of being too late connects directly with the fear of failure. And when you combine the two, it creates perfect paralysis. You don't act because you believe it won't work out, and you believe it won't work out because you think the time has passed. It's like living in a cell locked from the inside. Many people, after 35, begin to live on autopilot, and that's precisely when life begins to slip through their fingers. Have you noticed how the days seem more and more alike? Wake up, work, pay bills, sleep. And suddenly, a year has passed, and nothing has changed. The prison isn't external, it's internal. Science has shown that thoughts shape the body. Studies in positive psychology show that people who believe in possibilities feel more energy, have more motivation, and even better health. When the mind fills with images of impotence, the body responds with fatigue, discouragement, and even physical symptoms. It's no coincidence that so many after 35 report chronic fatigue, constant stress, and lack of pleasure. This isn't just biology, it's a direct consequence of how they see themselves. Now consider this. If your mind is capable of producing limitations that are so real, wouldn't it be equally capable of producing liberation? If self-image is a mental portrait, you can redraw that portrait. Of course, this requires practice. Just as you've become accustomed to seeing yourself as small, you can become accustomed to seeing yourself as great. That's where creative imagination comes in. Instead of repeating scenes of frustration and scarcity daily, you need to start building different scenes, new images that come to dominate your perception. A powerful exercise is this. Every day, for 10 minutes, visualize yourself living the life you truly desire, not as a distant dream, but as a present reality. Feel the emotions, the details, the environment. What do you see, hear, touch, smell? The more real the scene, the more it takes root in your subconscious. This simple practice has the power to reprogram your self-image, and when your self-image changes, your whole life begins to respond to this new identity. That's why I say, it doesn't matter if you're already 35, 45, or 65 years old. The only time that really matters is now. And if you use the now to create new images, new thoughts, and new actions, you will be free from the greatest prison of all, the idea that time has passed you by. The difference between those who win and those who remain trapped is not luck, talent, or external circumstance. It's continuity. Winners keep the flame of imagination burning as if it were a muscle. The imprisoned treat it as a childish toy that's put away in the closet when life gets serious. You can have the same ideas as another person, the same access to information, even the same network of contacts, and yet nothing happens because the image you nurture daily is small, poor, conforming. Why is it that some transform a spark into an empire and others bury that spark forever? Have you noticed how readily excuses surface? I don't have time. I don't have the resources. I lack experience. These aren't reasons. They're justifications for remaining stagnant. Picture this. Two people are given the same opportunity. One sees open doors. The other sees risks. The difference begins in their minds. The person who sees doors holds vivid images of what they want. They feel these images intensely. They act as if they already possess what they desire. The other anticipates problems, calculates scenarios of failure, and acts defensively. And their mind complies, creating results that prove them right. It's not magic, it's cause and effect. Thought generates emotion. Emotion dictates behavior. Behavior produces results, simple and devastating when ignored. Consider Steve Jobs. He didn't wait for the market to dictate what should exist. He envisioned the experience before the product existed. It wasn't market research that created the iPhone. It was an unwavering vision of how technology could integrate into people's lives. He set a standard and pulled the world toward it. This obsession with a consistent, repeated image distinguishes creators from followers. Do you prefer to replicate what already exists or design what's to come? On the other hand, there are clear examples of ruin stemming from a lack of this vision. Companies and executives with resources and status lost everything because they failed to imagine the future and clung to the past. We've seen giants who had opportunities to change course and pretended the landscape wasn't shifting and paid dearly for it. This isn't just about technology, it's about mindset. If you confuse pragmatism with blindness, you're signing a contract with stagnation. I witnessed this firsthand in my professional life. I remember a seminar where a man in his 50s entered with a hardened, skeptical expression, claiming he was too old to dream. During an exercise, I asked him to describe in detail an ordinary day 3 years hence, as if he were already living that life. Initially, there was nervous laughter, then silence, and when he began to describe, his voice wavered, and then his throat tightened. Genuine emotion, a mix of shame and relief, welled up. At the end of the retreat, he didn't deliver an epic speech. He made a small promise: I'm going to try selling that service I've been thinking about for years. 70 days later, my assistant showed me an email with photos of his renovated office, new clients, and a thank you note that read, "I thought it was too late, I was wrong." The man's reaction was one of surprise, followed by righteous anger at having waited so long. The energy that emanated from him was transformative. Imagination gave us direction. Small, consistent action gave it form. To turn the key, you need to operationalize this difference. First, maintain sustained images daily, not through empty fantasy, but through a practical roadmap. Describe in detail who you are, what you do in the morning, how you behave, the language you use. Second, align emotions with the picture. If the image doesn't evoke feeling, it lacks power. Third, perform micro-actions that only this future you would perform. Don't wait for perfection, wait for consistency. A major mistake is confusing imagination with illusion. Imagination without action remains fantasy. Imagination with action becomes transformation. Here are actionable steps. For 21 days, choose a single scene, not 5, just 1. See yourself performing a key task that your future self would perform: making a proposal, recording a video, talking to a potential client. Perform this action in its minimum viable version every day. Record results. After a week, adjust. After 3, accelerate. What kills an idea isn't a lack of brilliance, it's a lack of practice. Another powerful practice: dare to create small incongruities in your day to break the autopilot. Go to a meeting dressed slightly differently. Change the order of your tasks. Make a call before lunch that you'd normally leave for later. These disruptions generate new synapses. New synapses generate new images. Don't underestimate the domino effect. An image fueled by discipline transforms behavior, and behavior creates opportunities that didn't previously exist. If you want different results, stop repeating the thoughts that produce the same ones. Take responsibility for the direction of your images and treat creativity as a profession, not just a pastime. The world rewards those who imagine with courage and execute with humility. So I ask, will you be another who had ideas and buried them? Or will you start practicing the imagination that produces results today? Do the small exercise now. Close your eyes for 2 minutes and see a clear scene of success. Feel it. Tomorrow, repeat. After 21 days, compare. If nothing has changed, you broke the commitment. If something has changed, you've begun to escape your self-imposed prison. The choice is simple. The execution is daily. If there's one truth you need to take away, it's this. After 35, your imagination can be the prison that keeps you in the same place, or the key that unlocks the door to a completely new life. Everything you dream of, everything you desire, begins as a clear image in your mind. If you learn to sustain that image and act in accordance with it, nothing can prevent the growth that's already available to you. And if today you've climbed a step in your awareness, know that in the next video you'll advance even further, a simple but powerful step toward becoming 1% better than you are now. I thank you for being here with me, and I hope to see you in the next video, which is already appearing on your screen.